Super Rugby Saturday games. It's pretty much the rest of them, isn't it? There's 6 games on. If you're in New Zealand, it's kind of Saturday and Sunday morning. But yeah, there are some pretty interesting clashes on the cards here. And yeah, we'll go through these. Look at some of the picks, some of the predictions, and just how these teams fared against each other last year. And you guys can let me know your thoughts on the possible results as well. The first one, the Blues hosting the Crusaders. I'm going to be at this one. It might be a pretty painful night as a Blues fan. I've got the Blues gear on for the preview because the odds of me being able to wear Blues gear for the review, my camera is doing funny things, is pretty slim. Crusaders haven't been beaten by the Blues for a very, very long time. And there's always a chance, but it seems pretty unlikely. I suppose if you are going to catch the Crusaders napping, maybe week 1 is the week to do it. But yeah, not counting on anything there. In terms of expectations, let's just hope the Blues can be competitive. The Crusaders will want to get off to a title-defending winning start up in Auckland. But yeah, I guess we'll see. Picks, Collins is at 15 for the Blues, which will make most Blues fans pretty mad because he's not a very popular chap. Nanai and Ioane are on the wings, so that's pretty nice. Interestingly, Faiane is preferred over Sonny Bill in the midfield. Ma'anonu starts at 13, so Sonny Bill's on the bench. So there is a bit of age there, so I suppose it's kind of not a bad thing to have. Maybe TJ doing the 80, but supposedly Ma'a's in really good fitness, so I guess we'll see. Otere Black finally gets his Blues career underway after being injured all last season, so we'll see how he goes. The back row of Akira Ioane and Dalton Papali'i will look pretty nice, actually, at 7 and 8. But Tom Robinson at 6, perhaps not as sexy a pick as could have been. There's no Blake Gibson, he's out. Tuipulotu's captain in the second row, Mafaleo, Parsons, and Hodgman in the front row. So Tuina Koafe and Tuangafasi, All Blacks, are on the bench. Hopefully they can add a bit of impact. If there's one thing about this Blues bench, I suppose, you can bring on the likes of Tuina Koafe, Tuangafasi, Augustine Pulu, and Sonny Bill. So there's a bit of depth on the bench. Crusaders, they've rested a few guys, but Todd gets the start as captain from number 7. Fitu Douglas is in at 8, so there's no Kieran Reid for this one. Crotty and Enor are 12 and 13. George Bridge and Mataele are on the wings. Havili's at fullback. Mo'unga's at 10. Bryn Hall's at 9. Taufua at 6. It's a pretty good looking back row for the Crusaders. Front row, Moody, Makaleo, and Franks. And then their bench is probably going to outdo the Blues bench, to be fair. You've still got Fanal, Perry, Alaalatoa, Romano, Sanders, Drummond, Hunt, and Jordan. Will Jordan is a guy to watch. Hopefully he gets some exciting plays in, but not this week against the Blues. Save it for next week, Will, please. Last season, Blues didn't have any luck against the Crusaders. They lost at Eden Park, 32 points to 24. I guess that's respectable, but it's still a loss, and the Crusaders gave them a bit of a hiding down in Christchurch, 54 points to 17. The bookies are saying Crusaders by 6. That'd be a bonus point. I think as a Blues fan, I would take a bonus point loss against the hated rival Crusaders, but they're a pretty good team, man. So if you can get any points off them, I think that is going to be a bonus, even though as a Blues fan, you should be saying, I want to win, I want to win, I want to win. Putting my realistic hat on, what can I say? The next one, the Waratahs hosting the Hurricanes, is the only Aussie-Kiwi match of the first round. They didn't actually meet each other last season, so there's a bit of mystery about how this one could end up going. I suppose if the Waratahs are going to maintain that record they had as the top dog in the Aussie Conference, it'd be nice for them to get off to a good start. The Hurricanes didn't have their best start last season when they started away to the Bulls. They seem to have a thing about starting away and away from New Zealand. But Sydney's a wee bit closer than Pretoria, so shouldn't be any travel factor for them. They'll be looking to get a win as well. So this has potential to be a pretty good game. In terms of lineups, Falau's at 15. Adam Ashley Cooper is back at 13. So like the Blues, they've got another kind of senior guy there. Carmichael Hunt, interestingly, is in at 12. We'll see how he goes with his new team. Curtis Rona and Alex Newsom on the wings. Bernard Foley starts at 10. Jake Gordon's at 9, which is preferable for me. Michael Hooper is at 7. Jack Dempsey's at 8. Ned Hannigan at 6. See if that guy's managed to put a bit of mongrel in him over the off-season. I did see some photos of him out in the country, like in the bush out in Australia doing farm work, but his clothes were eerily clean for a guy doing farm work, so maybe it was just a stage shot. Kepu Fitzpatrick and Harry Johnson-Holmes are the front row. Latu, interestingly, comes on from the bench, and for the Wallabies, that's kind of where we see him make the most impact, with like his impact at the breakdown from the bench seems to be his thing. Will Miller's on the bench too, Mick Mason, Cam Clark, so yeah, it's still a pretty good looking Waratahs squad, but the Hurricanes also pretty slick looking in some areas, and other areas perhaps not quite that intimidating. I mean, you look at the outside backs, Geordie Barrett, Vince Arso, and Ben Lamb. That's proper class. Laumapi and Proctor in the midfield. That's Matt Proctor. The back row is good, Princep, Savia, and Evans, but perhaps the second row, they got Liam Mitchell and James Blackwell. It's not exactly Sam Whitelock, Brodie Retallick, but then again, the Waratahs have got like Rob Simmons and Jed Holloway, so I don't think either side's really setting the world on fire. I've got to stop clicking my pen. With those second row choices. Tumaga Allen, Ricky Riccatelli, and Chris Eves. Front row, so Dane Coles is on the bench. Ben May's on the bench. Hussein's on the bench. We've got Walker Liawere to come on. And Duplessis Karifi, he looked pretty good in the Mitre 10, so we'll see if there's any impact to be had. I feel like these two squads, when you compare them with perhaps that Crusaders squad, still look a touch off the pace, but hey, it's early days. We don't really know where everyone is at. Perenara is captain for the Canes, and there's no Bodie. Fletcher Smith starts at 10, so a fair bit of pressure on him up against an experienced hand in Bernard Foley. Canes by 6 is what the bookies are saying. Traditionally, the betting trends, if it's an Australian team against New Zealand team, pretty much always favour the New Zealand team based on recent history. The next one, Sunwolves hosting the Sharks in Singapore. Sunwolves have had a better prep for their season this year than they have pretty much any other season in Super Rugby. They've had a lot more time together and there's a lot more stability in their squad. So I'm expecting a bit more from them this season. They've improved year on year, and this season, especially with Japan hosting a World Cup, needs to be a year where Japan and their rugby take a big step forward. So hopefully the Sunwolves are able to really make a mark on the competition this year. But there is still a bit of movement around in the squad. For the Sharks, last season they scraped into the playoffs, and they'll be looking to take it one step better with that squad that they've got. I haven't done a season preview for the Sharks or the Lions because they both announced their squads pretty late and I didn't have time. But yeah, their squad still looks pretty good. In terms of the picks, there's still some familiar names in that Sunwolves squad from last year, like the front row, Miller, Brigvadze, and Naivalu. James Moore still around the second row, Hendrik Tui, Eddie Quirk, and Vosayako in the back row. So there's no Michael Leach for this one. But Hayden Parker still at 10. He had a very good steady hand last year, got a lot of kicks, and that kept the Sunwolves competitive in some of their games. Rene Ranger is going to be making a Sunwolves debut from the left wing. Phil Burley, Shane Gates in the midfield. Samisi Masarewa, right wing. He's had good games last year as well. Gerard van den Heever in the fullback slot. Did he play 1 or 2 games last year for the Sunwolves? Wasn't his best outing when he played, from what I remember. Michael Little was on the bench, which is pretty disappointing because he was one of the best midfielders in Super Rugby last year. Yeah, for the Sharks, there's some familiar names, but also a couple that are a bit new to me. So you guys who are Sharks fans will have to give me some insight, especially on this fullback. What's his name? Fassi? I don't know much about him. Let me know if he's an exciting guy to watch, if he's anything like some of the other fullbacks we've got from South Africa. Hopefully he's a class player. Nkosi and Mapimpi on the wings, that's class. Esterhazen and one of my most favoured midfield combinations. I like them. They haven't quite done it at Springbok level, but for the Sharks, they always look very good. Rob de Prea is at 10. He's a very steady hand again. If you're going to go for steady hand against steady hand, this is the game. But perhaps Rob's got a wee bit of a bigger boot on him. Back row, Dan de Prea, Tyler Paul, and Jacques Vermeulen. Ruan Botha and Hiron Andrews in second row. Connor Eusthausen seemed good to see him back. Is it Hausen or Hazen? I always forget the pronunciation. Aka van der Merwe, who's an exciting guy to watch for a hooker. And Tendai and Tamawira. It's a pretty good looking Sharks team, man. On the bench, some of those names there I'm a wee bit less familiar with. Rhino Smith's there, Jeremy Ward. Don't know Jeremy Ward, but yeah, you Sharks fans can definitely educate me. Like I said, I haven't done a preview for the Sharks, so their squad is still a little bit more in that grey area for me. But most of the big names are there from last year, so they still should be able to do a job. They certainly did a job last season. It was 50 points to 22 over in Durban, so they gave the Sunwolves a bit of a hiding last time. The bookies have got the Sharks by 10 for this one. That's the biggest margin that's kind of being picked the Super Rugby week. So we'll see if the Sunwolves are able to buck that trend a wee bit. The next one, the Bulls host the Stormers in a proper South African derby match. This one has the look of a pretty exciting one. The Stormers last season away from home were really poor. The Bulls didn't have their best year, but some of their acquisitions make it look like they could take a significant step forward. Whether it's enough for the playoffs, I'm not sure. But they've certainly got some good players there. They'll be wanting to get off a good run at home. Last year at Loftus, they were able to get the win, 33 points to 23. But at Newlands, it was the other way around, so 29 points to 17. Home team seems to be the one that gets the result. We'll see if that's the case here. Bulls, it's Galant at fullback. That's what I was talking about, exciting fullbacks. He's been injured for a wee bit, so I'm happy to see him fit. Johnny Kotze and Speckman are on the wings. I'm excited to see how Speckman goes at 15s. Odendale and Creel at 12 and 13 is a pretty familiar combo. Andre Pollard and Papier at 9 and 10. That's a Springbok combo. But then you got Dwayne Vermeulen at 8, perhaps the most exciting acquisition of the off-season. Lud Diach is there. There's no Snyman. There is a Snyman, but it's not Achias Snyman. So there is Eli Snyman on the bench. And Yekane Brits and Gaboka in that front row, so we'll see how Brits goes. It's been a wee while, apart from that Barbars game, that he's had a proper crack. He's been without a team for quite some time, so it's good to see him on the Bulls lineup. Libbock's on the bench, Van Sale's on the bench, but yeah, Bowley's on the bench as well. It's a nice looking Bulls team. How well Potagieman can get them to kind of gel, I'm curious to see. It's first week, man. None of us really know what's going to happen. Stormers, again, it's a side full of some box. You got Mbonambi, Wukolo, two Springboks in that front row. Ali Vermaak's there on the loose head. Schikkeling and Murat. Murat, from what limited amounts we saw of him last year, seemed to be a pretty useful kind of prospect player. Kolisi captains at 6. Peter Steff is at 7. Sikambu Zanoche is at 8. That's a pretty classy looking back row. Damien Willems is starting at 10. There was some talk of him playing 15, but he is at 10, so that's encouraging. SP Moraes on the wing. Damon Delende and Ryan Nell at 12 and 13. JJ Engelbrecht at 14. Dylan Lades at 15. It's a useful looking Stormer squad, man. They should be better than they have been away from home. Whatever they did in the off-season, they need to get that mental block out of the way, and they need to start well. Skara into Benny's on the bench. Corne Fourie, Chris Van Sale, Cobus van Wyk. Jean-Luc Duplessis was supposed to be the guy that was starting at 10. Still behind Damien Willemse, so that's going to be an interesting one to see if perhaps at some point Willemse slots back to 15 if Jean-Luc comes on. Bulls by 3 are what the bookies are saying. I'm sure the Stormers wouldn't be saying Bulls by 3. But yeah, in terms of perhaps pipping the Lions to that top spot in the South African Conference this year, you can't be giving up points to your rivals, so it's a pretty key game early. And the last one, Jaguares up against the Lions. Now, the Jaguares don't really have a traditional rival because of their geographic location, but I feel like if there is one team that is their rival, it's the Lions. They're both cats on the logo. I need to update that Jaguares logo. I know it's the old one. I do like this one better though. But yeah, they've played each other a lot, and they seem to be whoever's at home always wins. They played each other 3 times last year. Regular season in South Africa, it was 47-27 to the Lions. In Argentina, 49-35 to the Jaguares, and then the quarterfinal back in South Africa, 40 points to 23. And previous seasons pretty much been the same. Whoever's at home wins, and the Lions traditionally haven't taken their strongest team to Argentina, but I feel like it's first game of the season, so there's no reason for them not to this year, and you can kind of see that in some of their picks. There are a few new names in this Jaguares lineup. They've lost a few players in the off-season, but this guy, Mako Vivas, I don't know anything about him. He's their loose head. But Crevi and Medrano are at hooker and tight head. They're very familiar. Petty and Lavanini, very familiar second row. Matera, Bruni, and Ortega Decio, very nice. Bertrano and Bonija are at 9 and 10. Bonija, even though he was always behind Sanchez, from what we've seen of him, even for the Pumas, actually looks like a proper player. So I don't think they're going to be missing all that much with Sanchez. But course of the season will tell. Sanchez obviously top class player, but I think Bonija can do a job. Mojano and Delgui on the wings. Tukelet is back after having a pretty injury interrupted season last year. And De La Fuente captains at 12. Orlando's at 13. It's a nice looking Jaguares side for the most part. The fact that you can leave Crema on the bench speaks to some of that depth in that squad. For the Lions, I was talking about playing a pretty strong squad. Dylan Smith, Malcolm Marks, and Carlos Sadi. The front row, Marks obviously the biggest name there. Marvin Ori is in the second row alongside Rano Herbst. Whiteley's captain at 8. That's a steadying hand again. But Daimani is at 7. He's an excitement machine, a young player. I'm excited to see how he goes. I'm glad they haven't pushed him out to the backs because there was some talk of him being moved. But he's kind of that Adi Savia style player from what limited amounts I've seen of him. He really seems dynamic and he's got a bit of gas about him. Mana Skuman will be on the open side at 6, given the South African numbering. But yeah, for a guy who's not that big in stature, he certainly puts in a pretty giant effort whenever we see him play. Groom and Yankees 9 and 10, Dianti 11. Skorsan is fit and at 14, so that's nice after his season. Didn't really get off the ground last year till right towards the end. Foster and Mapo 12 and 13. Andreas Kutsia 15. Ron Combrink can't make the starting side. He is on the bench. Lions by 2, so they're picking an away win, but part of that is because the Lions finished higher and made the final. But at home, the Jaguares are very hard to beat. And especially for the Lions, just given that record the two teams have against each other. So yeah, those are the 5 games, can't count apparently, that we've got on for this Saturday. Very much looking forward to these ones. Obviously the Reds are on the bye. But you guys let me know your thoughts on these games. Who are you looking forward to seeing? Some of these guys who I'm not that familiar with, please do let me know about them in the comments. It's a new season, so there will be some new guys coming through. I'm probably more familiar with the New Zealand guys because I've seen most of them in the Mitre 10 Cup, but some of the guys who've been playing Curry Cup or NRC or the Jaguares guys in Argentina domestically, haven't seen much of them, so there's a fair bit of learning for me to do as well. We're finally going to get a chance to see how some of these teams are going, and I'm pretty pumped to see how it goes. As I said, I'm going to be at that Blues game. If you see me there, Blues fans, Crusaders fans, give me a wave, give me a hello. If you're a Crusaders fan after the game and you've given us a hiding, just leave me be. I'll be sad. Right. You guys let me know your thoughts. I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.